I'm Heidi Collins, 22, and last weekend, my life turned upside down at my parents' wedding anniversary party. My younger brother shoved me hard as I reached for a soda, my ankle twisting with a sharp crack. I crashed to the ground, pain searing through me, struggling to stand. He smirked. "Stop overreacting." My parents looked at me with faint smiles, saying it was just a joke. Their casual dismissal stung worse than the fall. I didn't argue or beg, I stared at them, my so-called family, treating me like I didn't matter. That betrayal ignited something fierce in me. 2 weeks later, my brother's college fund was gone, redirected to a cause that meant something, and so was I. I walked away for good, and what I did next made them regret ever brushing me off. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you trusted? Share your story in the comments, I'm reading them all. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in our family's backyard in Portland, and I, Heidi Collins, was stuck at my parents' wedding anniversary party. The event was supposed to celebrate 25 years of my parents' marriage, but it felt like another excuse for my family to parade their expectations. My father, Gary Collins, was charming the guests, cracking jokes about his perfect family, while my mother, Donna Collins, played the doting wife, refilling drinks with a forced smile. My younger brother, Brandon Collins, lounged by the dessert table, scrolling through his phone, ignoring everyone. I was there out of duty, not joy, my shoulders heavy with the weight of their unspoken demands. 2 years ago, my grandfather, a small business owner who'd built a modest real estate firm, passed away. He left me $100,000, a fortune that changed everything. I'd spent weekends with him in his final years, listening to stories of his deals, sharing my dreams of becoming a graphic designer. He saw my drive, my late nights sketching logos, and trusted me to use the money wisely. "You're the only one with a head on your shoulders," he'd said, his voice gruff but warm. My parents and Brandon, though, saw it differently. To them, I wasn't Heidi, their daughter or sister. I was a walking bank account. Their resentment simmered, surfacing in snide comments about my lucky break or pointed questions about my savings. I brushed it off, hoping they'd let it go, but that day it all boiled over. I was navigating through the crowd, balancing a plate of food, when I reached for a soda on the table. Brandon, standing nearby, suddenly stepped forward and shoved me hard. My ankle twisted under me with a sharp pop, and I crashed to the ground, my plate shattering. Pain shot through my leg, leaving me gasping, struggling to stand. "Stop overreacting." Brandon snapped, his smirk cold and mocking. I looked up, expecting someone to step in, but my parents just glanced over with faint smiles. "He's just messing around, Heidi," my mother said, her tone dismissive, as if I'd tripped over my own feet. My father chuckled, turning back to his conversation, not even bothering to check if I was okay. The guests barely noticed their chatter, drowning out my humiliation. I clenched my fists, the pain in my ankle pulsing in time with my rising anger. This wasn't just a shove, it was a message. They didn't care about me, only what I could give them. I hobbled to a chair, my mind racing. I'd spent years trying to keep the peace, ignoring their jabs, footing bills they couldn't cover. But that moment, with Brandon's smirk and my parents' indifference, cracked something open. I wasn't going to be their doormat anymore. As I sat there forcing a smile for the guests, I knew I had to do something big to make them see me as more than their cash machine. I limped into the house, my ankle screaming with every step. The party noise faded behind me as I collapsed onto the living room couch, clutching my leg. Each throb felt like a hammer, but the sting of my family's dismissal hurt worse. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking, and dialed Carly Evans, my best friend since high school. "Can you come over?" I asked, my voice tight. "Something's wrong." She didn't hesitate. "On my way," she said, her tone sharp with concern. Carly arrived 20 minutes later, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes scanning me as she dropped her bag. "What happened?" she demanded, sitting beside me. I told her everything, how my brother shoved me, how my parents brushed it off with those faint smiles, calling it a joke. My voice cracked as I described the pain, not just in my ankle but in my chest, where their indifference had lodged like a stone. Carly's face hardened. "They've been using you, Heidi," she said, leaning forward. "This isn't new. They've always treated you like their personal ATM because of that money." I blinked, her words hitting like a slap. She was right. I'd been paying for family dinners, covering my brother's phone bill, even helping with Mom's car repairs, all because I felt obligated. Carly grabbed my hand. "Think about it," she pressed. "When was the last time they asked about you? Your designs? Your dreams? They only care about what you can give them." My stomach twisted. I'd ignored it for years, chalking it up to family quirks, but now it was clear. Their love came with a price tag. I shifted on the couch, wincing as my ankle protested. "Why do they act like I owe them?" I muttered, more to myself than to Carly. She sighed, her voice softening. "Because they're jealous, Heidi. That inheritance was meant for you, not them. They resent you for it." I stared at the floor, my mind replaying every snide remark, every time they'd hinted I should share the wealth. It wasn't just about today, it was a pattern. My brother's smirk, my parents' casual shrugs, they didn't see me as family, just as a resource. Carly stood pacing the room. "You can't keep letting them walk over you," she said, her voice firm. "You're stronger than this. What are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer yet, but her words lit a spark. I'd spent too long trying to please them, hoping for approval that never came. My ankle throbbed, but my resolve was growing. I looked at Carly, her eyes steady and fierce, and felt a shift. Maybe I didn't have to stay in their shadow. Maybe I could fight back. That night, alone in my room, I dug out my old journal from a box under my bed. My ankle throbbed, but Carly's words echoed louder, urging me to face the truth about my family. The worn notebook, filled with my teenage scribbles, held memories I'd buried to keep the peace. I flipped through its pages, each entry a reminder of how my parents and Brandon had treated me, not as family, but as a means to an end. The more I read, the clearer it became. They saw me as their financial fix, nothing more. One entry, dated 2 summers ago, stopped me cold. I'd saved for months from my part-time coffee shop job to buy a professional camera, dreaming of building a portfolio for graphic design school. Brandon, bored one weekend, grabbed it to test it, ignoring my protests. He dropped it on the pavement, shattering the lens. "It's just a camera," he'd said, shrugging, not even offering to chip in for repairs. I'd spent weeks crying over the $500 I had to shell out while Mom told me to stop being so sensitive. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. They never held Brandon accountable, and I let it slide, thinking that's what sisters do. Another page from last year burned even more. Brandon had begged me for a loan, $2,000 for a new laptop, swearing he'd pay me back from his summer job. I gave it to him, dipping into my savings, believing his promises. Months passed and he never mentioned it. When I brought it up, he laughed it off, saying, "You've got plenty of money, Heidi. Chill." My parents backed him up, telling me family helps family, as if my hard work didn't matter. I'd swallowed my anger, but now, reading those words, I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. I leaned back against my pillows, the journal heavy in my hands. These weren't isolated incidents, they were a pattern. Every time I'd stepped up, paid for something, or let their demands slide, they'd taken more. Mom would call me responsible when she needed me to cover a bill, but never when I needed support. Dad praised my generosity only when it suited him, like when he needed a new suit for work. Brandon acted like my money was his entitlement, never once saying thank you. They didn't value me, they valued what I could provide. I closed the journal, my chest tight with realization. Carly was right. My family didn't see me as Heidi, the daughter or sister with dreams of her own. I was their safety net, their backup plan, ever since Grandpa's inheritance landed in my name. They'd never asked about my graphic design projects, my late-night sketching, or my plans for the future. They only cared about what they could take. The weight of that truth settled over me, cold and undeniable. I wasn't just hurt, I was done being their tool. A couple of nights later, I overheard my parents and Brandon in the dining room. I'd been restless, unable to sleep. My mind stuck on the journal entries that had laid bare their greed. I crept downstairs for a glass of water, my ankle brace creaking softly when their hushed voices stopped me cold outside the door. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding, and listened. "We need her to sign the loan papers?" My father Gary said, his tone sharp. "Marcia's breathing down our necks for that $30,000 we owe her." My mother Donna sighed. "It's not just Marcia. Brandon's tuition is due next month, another $20,000. We can't cover it." Brandon chimed in, his voice smug. "Heidi's got the cash. Just tell her it's a family emergency. She'll cave." My stomach churned. They were plotting to trick me into signing a loan using my inheritance to bail out my aunt's debt and fund Brandon's college. I gripped the wall, my nails digging into the paint. This wasn't a request. It was a scheme to drain me. I slipped back upstairs, my pulse racing, and called Carly. "They're planning to scam me," I whispered, my voice shaking with anger. I spilled everything: the loan, Marcia's debt, Brandon's tuition. Carly didn't miss a beat. "You need a lawyer?" "Heidi," she said. "My cousin Ellen Wright can help. She's sharp and knows trust law. I'm texting you her number now." Within minutes, Ellen's contact popped up on my phone. I stared at it, my resolve hardening. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. The next morning, I called Ellen. "I need to protect my inheritance," I told her, explaining the conversation I'd overheard. Ellen's voice was calm but firm. "If they're planning to deceive you into signing, we can stop them. Your grandfather's trust gives you control over your share and possibly more." "Can you meet me tomorrow?" I agreed, setting a time to visit her downtown office. Hanging up, I felt a surge of clarity. My family thought they could play me, but they'd underestimated me. I wasn't just fighting for my money, I was fighting for my dignity. I spent the day researching, confirming what Ellen had hinted at. The family trust set up by Grandpa included Brandon's college fund, but I had access as the primary beneficiary. An idea sparked: I could redirect those funds not to my pocket, but to something meaningful. My family wanted to use me, I'd turn their game against them. By evening, I was ready to take action, fueled by years of being their doormat. This was my chance to reclaim my power. The next week, I sat across from Ellen Wright in her downtown office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Portland's skyline. My ankle brace felt heavy, but my determination was heavier. Ellen, sharp in a navy blazer, leaned forward, her eyes scanning the trust documents I'd brought. "Your grandfather set this up well," she said, tapping the papers. "You're the primary beneficiary of the $100,000, and as trustee, you have control over the family trust, including Brandon's college fund." I nodded, my jaw tight. "Can I move that money?" I asked. Ellen's smile was quick. "Yes. You can redirect funds as long as it's legal." "What are you thinking?" I explained my plan: transfer $60,000 from Brandon's college fund to a charity for disadvantaged children. It wasn't about revenge, it was about taking back my power and doing something meaningful. Ellen nodded, pulling up forms on her laptop. "There's a local charity, Hope for Kids, that supports foster children with education and housing. I can draft the transfer paperwork today." I felt a rush of certainty. "Do it," I said. We spent the next hour reviewing the trust's terms, confirming I could move the money without legal pushback. By the time I left, Ellen had promised to finalize the transfer within days, wiring $60,000 to Hope for Kids. Back home, I kept my routine normal, hiding my plans from my family. I didn't want them suspecting anything until it was done. While they thought I was still their obedient daughter, I was quietly building my escape. I spent evenings on my laptop applying for graphic design jobs in Seattle. I'd always loved the city's vibrant art scene, and it was far enough to start fresh. After 3 Zoom interviews, a small design firm, Pixel Pulse, offered me a junior designer position with a starting salary of $45,000 a year. I accepted on the spot, my heart racing with possibility. I'd have a job, a new city, and a life free from their demands. I coordinated with Ellen via email, ensuring the charity transfer was discreet. She sent me confirmation that the $60,000 had been moved along with a receipt from Hope for Kids. Reading their mission helping kids who'd been abandoned or neglected felt right. Those children deserved a chance more than Brandon deserved a free ride. I also rented a small studio apartment in Seattle using my savings to cover the deposit. Each step felt like shedding a weight I'd carried for years. My family thought they could manipulate me, but I was rewriting the rules. Sunday dinner felt like a setup waiting to explode. I sat at the dining table, my packed bags hidden in my room, my heart steady despite the tension. My parents, Gary and Donna, passed dishes around, their smiles too tight, their glances too frequent. Brandon slouched across from me, picking at his food, his eyes darting to Mom. I knew what was coming. Ellen had warned me to expect their move. The loan papers were tucked under Dad's plate, barely concealed. I ate slowly, waiting for their act to begin. Halfway through dinner, Dad cleared his throat. "Heidi, we need to talk about family," he said, his voice overly warm. "Your Aunt Marcia's in trouble, needs $30,000 to clear a debt, and Brandon's tuition is due soon, $20,000 more. We need you to sign a loan to help out." Mom nodded, her expression pleading. "It's for all of us," she added. Brandon leaned forward, his tone casual. "You got the money, Heidi. Don't make this hard." Their words were rehearsed, a script I'd overheard days ago. I set my fork down, my voice calm but cold. "I know about your plan," I said, locking eyes with each of them. "You thought you could trick me into signing away my inheritance for Marcia's debt and Brandon's tuition. I'm not your bank." Silence crashed over the table. Mom's face paled, Dad's jaw tightened. Brandon scoffed. "What are you talking about?" But his eyes betrayed panic. I stood my chair, scraping the floor. "I'm done being used," I said. "I'm leaving." I walked upstairs, grabbed my bags, and headed for the door. Mom called after me. "Heidi, don't be ridiculous." Dad shouted. "You owe us?" I didn't turn back. My car was packed, ready for Seattle. As I drove away, their voices faded and a weight lifted. I was free. 2 days later, Ellen texted me. Hope for Kids had sent Brandon a letter thanking him for the $60,000 donation from his college fund. I smiled, imagining his face when he read it. They'd underestimated me, and now they'd pay the price. 6 months later, my Seattle apartment was my safe haven. The small studio with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in my sketches felt like home. I thrived at Pixel Pulse, my graphic design job, where my latest project, a vibrant logo for a local cafe, had just been approved. My days were filled with color palettes and client meetings, a world away from the suffocating expectations of my family. I hadn't spoken to Gary, Donna, or Brandon since the night I left, and the silence was liberating. One evening, as I sipped tea at my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from Zoe Carter, a childhood friend who still lived in Portland. "Your family's a mess," she wrote. "Brandon's working part-time at a gas station, barely scraping by since his college fund vanished. Marcia sued your parents for the $30,000 they owe her. They're drowning in legal fees." I stared at the message, a mix of vindication and pity stirring inside me. They'd built their lives on exploiting me, and now they were facing the consequences of their greed. I typed back, "Thanks for the update," and set my phone down, feeling no urge to reconnect. A week later, a letter arrived from Hope for Kids, forwarded by Ellen. It was from a teenager named Mia, a beneficiary of the $60,000 donation I'd made from Brandon's fund. Her words were simple, but raw. "Your gift helped me stay in school and get therapy. I was in foster care, feeling worthless, but now I believe I can have a future." I read it twice, tears welling up. Mia's gratitude wasn't just about the money, it was a reminder that my choice had ripple effects, giving someone else a chance I'd fought for myself. That letter shifted something in me. For years, I'd tied my worth to my family's approval, bending over backward to please them. But Mia's words showed me I was more than their demands. I didn't need their validation to matter. Cutting them out wasn't just about protecting my inheritance, it was about reclaiming my life. I pinned Mia's letter above my desk, a quiet promise to keep valuing myself. Seattle was my fresh start, and I was finally free to live for me.